So if you're in your 20s and you feel like, is this it? Is this what my 20s are meant to feel like? And you're not sure what to do with your life, there's nothing wrong with you, my friend. You're not broken. You're in what psychologists will call a developmental crisis, or more specifically for you and me, because we're younger, a quarter-life crisis. And what you see here, these 5 steps, are the exact system to get out of it. Step 1 is feeling trapped. Step 2 is feeling disconnected. And most people actually get stuck here because they see this feeling of becoming disconnected as a problem rather than a process of this 5-step system. 3 is removal, 4 is explore, and 5 is build. And once you get to 5, you are completely out of the quarter-life crisis. To give you some context, I'm making this video because I am no stranger to the quarter-life crisis. I had one when I was 19, another when I was 22, one more when I was 25. What I wanted more than anything else back then is clarity. I wanted to know what these feelings were, why I had them, and more importantly, what to do with them. And this system that I'm going to show you today explains all of that. So let's get into it, shall we? The first thing we need to talk about is this feeling of being trapped. It's basically feeling trapped in a life that you no longer desire. And to really illustrate this, I want to take you back to my first quarter-life crisis when I was 19. I decided pretty early that I was going to be a chemical engineer. And then when I got into my second year of university, I really started to question what I would be pursuing because I didn't have a clear vision of the future. I didn't know if I was going to like chemical engineering. And this idea of running a 10-year experiment, because you have 5 years at university, I was doing a double degree, then you have 5 more years of actually getting experience to reach a conclusion of, is this actually what you want to do? I just wasn't able to rationalize that in my mind. And when I really imagined myself sitting at a computer, looking at spreadsheets all day, doing the same thing in and out every single day, with my only escape climbing this bullshit career ladder, like that never appealed to me. That whole idea of what I was trying to do, honestly, it felt like death. But then I asked myself a really terrifying questions, like, if I don't do this, what else am I going to do? And I couldn't give you an answer. Well, I couldn't give myself an answer because everything else, every other option just felt equally as unappealing. And that made me feel extremely trapped on this path because I didn't know what to do. I had no motivation to do anything else. Now, I would consider myself quite lucky that I had these feelings pretty early on, because that led to a series of small decisions that I made that would change the direction of my life. And I know a lot of people, maybe even you, they do run this 10-year experiment and they get to their mid-20s or through to their late 20s and they realize that I pursued the wrong thing. I committed so much time to this thing that I just don't want it anymore. It could be a degree or a career or maybe even a long-term relationship that you went out of high school with. And now you're questioning, like, do I actually want to be with this person anymore? And one of the really big reasons why a lot of people feel trapped is because they already invested so much into this thing, but you don't know where else you want to go. And so this leads to a feeling of being trapped in a life that you no longer desire. And there's good news, because you're not going to stay feeling trapped forever. Naturally, over time, you will progress to phase 2 of the process. So the second stage in the quarter-life crisis is you gradually becoming more disconnected with this thing, no matter what it is. And you know this happens because you feel withdrawn, checked out, burnt out. And there's this overarching sense of you being unmotivated to do anything. These red lines here, you can think about them as threads that attach you to this thing. They are your identity or how you see yourself. They can be the roles that you have in whatever this thing is, or it could be the commitments and expectations people have of you. And over time, for a bunch of different reasons, these threads become weaker, and that makes you feel this sense of being disconnected from it, but not completely detached. Because being completely detached would be severing these things completely, like that. And I want to illustrate this by telling you the story of my second quarter-life crisis. It was in 2019, I'm now 22 years old, and I started applying for engineering experiences because we needed 12 weeks in order to graduate. And up until this point, engineering was my sole focus. I worked really hard, I studied really hard, I got good grades, and yet every application I sent out came back with a rejection. And this threw me into a spiral. I felt like everything that I was building towards no longer matters. And it blew apart my sense of identity. And one of the massive problems of the quarter-life crisis is that most people get stuck in stage 2 because they see this detachment process as a problem that they have to fix rather than just a natural progression through this process. So what they try to do is that they try to reattach themselves to this thing that they used to do, but it doesn't work, and it just keeps you stuck. So stage 3 of the quarter life crisis is to remove yourself from the situation. And that's so that you can complete this detachment process. But it feels terrible because you have to let go of this previous version of yourself, this identity that you've been holding on to for a very long time. And you haven't created a new identity yet in this place either. If you've seen my video that I made about consistency, I called this space in between this identity that you're letting go and this identity that you're about to create, I call it the gap. And the way most people, or a common way that a lot of people go about this removal process, is that they physically put distance between themselves and the situation. That could mean moving to a different city, or to a different state, or to even a different country. Basically, you just want to have distance in between you and whatever it is that you do not want anymore. You finally have the space that you need to just figure things out. I can tell you, there were a couple months during my second quarter life crisis where I was the most depressed and demotivated I've ever been in my life. But I stuck at it and I kept sending out these applications for different engineering internships, and eventually one popped off. So of course, I accepted the offer and I did my 12 weeks of experience at a power plant. I kept working there for the next 2 years. To begin with, everything was great. I was able to learn some new things. I was able to apply what I enjoyed learning about at university to real world applications, and it was amazing. But as you can predict, that wouldn't last. Within a couple of years, this old feeling of being stuck and trapped started to bubble back up. And at that point, I decided I needed to make a change. I couldn't keep doing what I was doing anymore because it just wasn't going to work. So I hopped onto Seek and I found a really cool engineering job over in Adelaide, which is about 2,000 kilometers away from where I am now. And again, once I started that job, everything was great. I was learning new things. I thought this was my dream job. But again, within a couple of more years, those old feelings of being trapped and stuck again started bubbling back up. Now you can say to me, Josh, this seems pretty obvious. You physically removed yourself from your geographic location and you did something else, but it was still engineering. You still went back to this old identity that wasn't serving you anymore. And to that, I would say, yeah, you're 100% right. But there are some things that I haven't told you yet. When you become detached from a situation, you put yourself in a position for you to start exploring openly. And I don't give myself enough credit for how smart 19 and 20-year-old Josh was. Because even before I knew about these concepts that I'm teaching you today, he intuitively understood what needed to be done. Because it's easy for me to look back on the last 8 years and say, okay, I shouldn't have done engineering. I should have just quit when I was in my second year and gave myself time to figure out what I wanted to do or to go find myself. But here's the problem with that type of thinking. And 19, 20-year-old Josh understood this. I don't need time to work out and find myself. What I need is information. Because I didn't know where point B was. Point B could be anywhere on this map. So I need data points to make it more clear what exactly is it that I'm actually pursuing here. So I made 2 goals for myself. I said, it's probably likely I'm going to end up in a situation where I'm not going to pursue engineering long term. But I'm still going to do this because in my mind, I don't know what else I'm going to do. But I made 2 goals for the next several years. 1 was to understand myself better, and 2 was to understand the world. And so that would give me more clarity on what game am I actually playing here. See, 19 to 20-year-old Josh didn't see finding himself as a destination. He saw it as a process. And this is backed up in something that I learned just last week, or a couple of weeks ago actually. And that's the Japanese kanji for crisis is danger plus opportunity. Young Josh knew this intuitively. He knew that if he stayed on this default path and didn't start pursuing any other options, then it's going to lead him into a very dangerous situation. Yet he saw it as an opportunity to understand himself better and to start understanding the world better, because I was lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do, as I've been saying. And I was also riddled with self-doubt and insecurities. But I knew deep down inside of me, I needed more information. And it was that mentality that I had all the way back then that led to those series of little decisions that I made that would change the direction of my life. So give me a second, I'll write up a list on what they were. In 2017, I applied and got accepted to work on a social entrepreneurship project in remote Fiji. And that was a pretty pivotal moment in my life because it showed me that I care a lot about leadership and I care a lot about impact, particularly engineering design for impact. So that gave me a little bit more clarity on to keep pursuing engineering. Then in 2018, I wasn't quite happy with my personal life. I didn't like my body, so I started hitting the gym and I felt quite socially awkward and I wanted to improve that skill set. And that's when I started challenging myself more. in that social sense. In 2019, I started taking on more leadership roles at university. In 2020, I started writing online. In 2021, I started making the YouTube videos. In 2022, I moved to go do my dream job. And I really did think that job I was moving to was the dream job I've always wanted. Because everything I learned so far was pointing me in that direction. And I wanted to see if it was true. And then over the last few years, it's been me really coming to terms with that I don't care a whole lot for really technical engineering work. What I love the most is thinking about big ideas and impact. So I made the decision to quit engineering and then become a full-time creator. So the answer to the quarter-life crisis, if there was an answer for it, it would be this. Try new things, make mistakes. Because as you collect different data points, you reveal this map that you're navigating. So you have to trust your ability to put the pieces of the puzzle together as you get new pieces. Most of the time, you don't have to do anything really extreme. You can just start trying different things and see where that takes you. And if you start having something that you can't pull away from, that's when you know it's time to launch into step 5, which is build. As you go through the exploring phase, what you're really hunting for is this aha moment. It's the moment where everything just clicks together. You know exactly where you are and exactly where you're heading. This is a season of doing, a season of intensity, and effort becomes effortless because now you have launched into a new project. As much as we would like to force ourselves into forward momentum, it just doesn't work like that. You have to go through the previous steps before you're able to launch yourself into a season of intensity. The gym for me, for example, was a project that I launched myself into that became effortless over time. This YouTube channel and writing these ideas started off as a side project I was doing while I was trying to work everything out, and then eventually became the things that I care more about than anything. And if I didn't have this project of writing about my ideas and making these YouTube videos, then I would feel pretty lost and confused about what I'm doing with my life coming out of my engineering career. But even if I didn't have this project, I know that all I have to do is start experimenting and put the pieces of the puzzle together as I get new pieces. And that's the thing about projects, they rise and fall like I drew here on this chart. You go into a season of intensity and then over time you drop back down to feeling a bit lost and confused with what you're doing. You experiment a little bit more and then you launch back into another project. So you cycle between seasons of beings where nothing makes sense and then seasons of doing where everything makes sense. And as you go through this process, you'll take different fragments of all these phases of life you've been through that will make up your collective identity. I'm an engineer, I'm a gym bro, I'm a writer, and I'm a creator. I'm all these things now. So life will keep throwing different pieces at you that will make you question the entire puzzle. But now you have the tools in order to put those pieces together. You now understand what these feelings are, why you have them, and what to do about them. So the takeaway for this video is to allow yourself to go through the process. Because the system for the quarter-life crisis is you feel trapped, and then you feel disconnected because these threads attaching you to this thing that you no longer want become weaker over time for a bunch of different reasons. Then you allow yourself for those threads to detach by removing yourself from the situation completely. This gives you perspective and space for you to think about who you are as a person and what you want. You're in a position finally to actually figure things out. And that requires you to start exploring different data points. And then when you're ready, and you'll know because you'll just get this burst of intensity, it's time to start building a meaningful project. Hopefully all of that makes sense. If you like these ideas, I send them out every single week in advance of the videos. So you can go to my Substack, link is in the description, sign up there, and you'll be able to get these ideas early, straight to your inbox. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. Enjoy the rest of your day. I hope the video was useful for you. All right, bye.